Oh no, I've been talking this whole time and no one has been able to hear me. That is really funny. So, I had my mic turned off here because I was sketchnoting during the conference and sharing my pages with people in one of the breakout rooms, the backstage communication that was happening after the keynote. So, so sorry that I was on mute. That is hilarious. But you can see here, I was just sketchnoting until the last minute. That's why I got here late, because I was sketchnoting during the backstage pass that was happening with John Muir Laws and a bunch of people after the keynote, because the keynote was amazing. We heard a speech from Dr. Nasheen Razani. And Nasheen Razani is a doctor and a researcher, and she's been showing how important access to nature is for our health. So that was a great keynote, and I did a bunch of notes during that. But I'm going to start from the beginning to show you some of the amazing stuff that I learned in my classes today, and just all of these sketch notes, and give you just a recap for those of you that couldn't make it. I'm also going to talk about some of the special things I've been doing so that I can participate in workshops from 8 in the morning until 9 at night. I have been, I have some certain recommendations of how you can stay keep your nutrients up and all of that, because it's quite a marathon to be going for this long. All right, so I'm going to switch now to my document camera so you can see my sketchbook. You can also see some of the snacks that I've been using. I've been eating these herring snacks. They're really good and really quick. Also, butter is very nutrient-dense food, so it's a good thing to have during a long Zoom conference. Chocolate, of course, is very helpful and is a staple. For breakfast, I just eat spoonfuls of almond butter and chia seeds. I just supposedly the Tarahumara can run ultra marathons, and all they do is eat a teaspoon of these. So I've just been, so that I don't have to leave my desk during the conference, I just eat a spoonful of these with no water. I can't see why that could have any negative side effects, but don't follow my advice. I'm not a nutritionist. Okay, so going to the beginning here. I can't believe this is only day one of the normal conference. I've already been doing 2 days of the teacher conference. So it feels like it's been a lot longer, and I definitely filled a lot of pages today. You can see these are all pages that I filled today. Nature journaling definitely works for nature journaling, and sketchnoting are an approach that definitely work when you are listening to talks, as well as, making direct observations in nature. So I'm trying to practice as much as possible those skills. During Jack's talk, he talked a lot about growth mindset and how your brain physically changes. It physically changes based on what you focus on, what you practice. He gave his challenge for the day, and there's even an opportunity for people to win a gift certificate in the raffle. Then he introduced the guests who he was going to be in conversation with, and it was Tony Foster. Tony Foster is an amazing painter. He's from the UK, and he does these huge, this butter is getting in the way. I need to move this butter. Tony Foster does these huge watercolor paintings that he treks out into remote places and brings these huge pieces of watercolor and does these giant paintings. And he's often focusing on extreme places. He's the only person that's painted all 3 faces of Mount Everest. He has painted in Death Valley. He's done lots of scuba drawings, drawing under the ocean in the hottest places and the coldest places on the planet. Tony Foster is an amazing person, so it was really fun to hear about what he's been up to, and John Muir Laws, Jack, did a great job of interviewing him. This is all sketch notes from that conversation. It was really, really fun. He told a story about this worm that he found frozen on the road. And he said, what on earth induced that worm to cross that road on such a cold day? And that provided a sense of mystery for him. He also described how sorrow, awe, and surprise were connected to some of his nature journal pages, basically, that he did during lockdown. Because in the UK, they had a real serious lockdown during some of the stages of COVID. And then right after that, we had pencil miles. And you can see I got a little bit crazy here because you know what? If you've seen some of my past episodes, you know that I love this pen. It's been a slightly tumultuous relationship with this pen. Oh, this pen, I love it so much, but I've had some issues, and I finally worked on it. And I had to, during Pencil Miles, which is sort of just a hangout group with Ivea, an amazing group, I cleaned it out, and you can see there's some ink splatters here where I was messing around. But you can see here, I even sketch noted my process for how I refilled the ink in this Fude de Monin fountain pen. And I love this pen. That's why I got so excited writing about it here. It's really a great pen. I don't know if I can recommend it yet for nature journaling in the field because it's a little bit like a diva. It's sort of high maintenance, I would say, at this point. I haven't figured out yet how to make it more dependable and less high maintenance. But let me tell you this, when it is working, it is amazing. And I'm just going to post a link to it, a link to where you can purchase it into the comments there. I think it's really great, but like I said, it's not something, I'm not sure if I can recommend it for the field yet because it is a little bit, it has some issues with it. On the other hand, this Pilot Fudayaku pen, these are super dependable, and I use these in the field, and I have been using those for the rest of my notes. But you can see here, I did fill the Fude de Monin. I managed to squirt some ink onto my table and onto my computer. But everything turned out okay. And I got a nature journal, or do a quick sketch of this cactus. And this cactus is sort of a special guest on the Nature Journal show. Some of you may remember seeing it in several of my interviews where I asked people to draw it. We nature journaled this piece of cactus. And you might have noticed some changes. This cactus has been just floating around in my house on my counter for the last like 6 months or maybe even more. And one thing that has changed is this whole part here has grown since it has been in my house. Pretty amazing, huh? So I did get to draw that with my Fude de Monin. So that was Pencil Miles. I highly recommend not missing Pencil Miles. It's one of the best parts of the conference, in my opinion. And then this class was amazing. So I still need to go back. One thing about sketchnoting or nature journaling or taking notes of any sort at a conference is things go fast a lot of times. So a lot of times presenters are in a hurry. So coming up with systems where you can make your notes and make your sketches really fast is important. So one thing, I've been messing around with this way of doing my lettering where I start with the Tombow pen and I put in this sort of blocky letters, and then I use that for my outline. This is different than how I usually do bubble letters. And what I'm finding is I often don't have enough time to go back with the gel pen during the actual talk, during the actual workshop. So that means I'm creating homework for myself. And homework for nature journaling is something that is sort of controversial. Some people will do a lot of work in the studio when they get home or when they get back from a workshop or whatever. And some of us don't. And so figuring out what your capacity actually is for going back and adding things, working on things later is really important because it can be super demotivating if you leave all of this stuff and say you're going to come back for it. So just this class was amazing. We learned so much from Amy about how to make more diagrams in our nature journals and how to make them fun. But one thing I want to point out from before that is, or maybe this is from yesterday, look at this page right here. This page, I was using the Tombow pen almost entirely, And this is the kind of thing where I was basically creating homework for myself. To make this more legible, I would need to go back and maybe, like, oh, there was this graph here. This was the keynote from last night by Ann Stevens, and she had this whole graph here. And so like, I probably should have not created so much homework for myself, because these pages are basically unlegible unless I go back and add to them more. So you don't want to create too much homework for yourself. If you're at a nature journaling conference that starts at 8 in the morning and goes past 9 at night, because I'm already living off of sardines, almond butter, chocolate, and butter, because I can't leave my desk because there's so much information to cover. So I don't think I have enough time to go back to all of my pages from that day, especially if there's like 20 pages, I think, and add more information to them. So trying to figure out what are the ways that you can capture the information in one go. So on that note, once I got to Amy's class, I was starting to just go straight to the ink with this Pilot Fudoyaku pen. And that was making it a lot faster. So you can see here, she gave us a lot of activities. And I tried to draw as much during those activities and practice this diagramming, because this is something I really, really want to get better at in my nature journal, because I really think that this strategy is more in alignment with what I want to do with my nature journal than just drawing pretty pictures. And I think that using these diagrams is super powerful, and it's something that takes practice. So what I ended up doing was just going straight with this black pen and this Fudoyaku pen. And when I'm in a big hurry, I only do black. So you can see over here, I did the text in black as well. It's not just the drawings. In general, what I like to do with this pen is I use the black for the drawings and the gray for the ink, and that creates an automatic visual hierarchy that helps you organize information. So she talked about several strategies for doodle diagrams. It was amazing. If you aren't making it to the conference this year, you can still check out a similar version of this class on John Muirlaw's YouTube channel, because Amy taught for him one time, and she taught this doodling diagram subject. Here are more of my doodle diagrams from that class. Had a short break. I mean, this was awesome. She played videos where we got to watch these videos of animals in movement and try to nature journal them. Diagrams are super useful for showing movement. So this fish had this crazy mouth extension thing it would do to catch its prey. You can see how I used 3 drawings to show movement, since it's not possible for drawings to actually move on the page. After a lunch break and a nap, yes, taking naps is very important for your learning. So after a little bit of exercise, lunch, and a nap, I got to take Kristen Antonio's awesome class on nature journaling microscopic stuff. And that was so fun. She had video of all of these cool microorganism interactions going on, and I did my best to try to capture as much of the information as I could. She did have opportunities for us to nature journal the things that she was showing. One of the things that I learned is that when you draw stuff that is shown under a microscope, it is standard to show it inside of a circle. However, sometimes when it's zoomed in, the frame is not actually a circle, so you have to create your sort of own cropping. That was a little bit new to me. You can see that I still did blowout boxes where I tried to focus in more on this thing, for example, and on this that I brought out here. It was quite a fun class. There's my attempt to, I am trying to practice drawing people and at least have sort of an icon showing my different teachers. So there's Kristen, there's Amy. I have done, where's John Muirlaw's? John Muirlaw's didn't come out that great here. I like the way Tony Foster came out. He has suspenders and a mustache and glasses, so that makes it a lot easier. Kristen had a cool dress or blouse on, so it was fun to draw that. She described the methodology for how to do this on your own, and that microscopes are actually very affordable. And so I was really curious why so many people have these in their nature journal kit, but so many fewer people have, everybody has binoculars, but hardly anyone uses microscopes. Why do we have that bias against the microscopic things? I feel like we know so little about this, and there's probably things on my skin right now that I could be nature journaling if I had a microscope. That would be absolutely amazing to look at. So why do we have that bias away from the microscopic aspects of nature that we're, how often, if you went on the Nature Journal Club Facebook page and looked at nature journal pages, what percentage are of microscopic subjects? I bet you it is less than 1%. So why do we have that bias? Is that in alignment with our intentions about learning about nature or understanding the important things of nature? Or where does that bias come from? So let's pay attention to those things. And I was so grateful that we had a microscopic nature journaling, because also it was just fun trying, especially after taking that doodling diagrams class and then seeing these crazy organisms like moving. This was this crazy rotifer thing. I was trying to understand how it was creating suction, or what appeared like suction, in front of it. And I couldn't, you can see here I wrote, I don't understand this movement, because I could see in the video that there was something going on here, but I just wrote down my humility. I don't understand this movement. Later, when she said they're called rotifers and they actually have rotors, I understood. But it's okay to have things like this where you don't understand. That is totally fine. That's better than thinking you understand and being wrong. It also did this cool thing where it retracted its head when this larger thing like swam by, and then this, or I don't know if that's its head, but whatever it is, it retracted it. Was very interesting. I am also using a technique where a sort of a metacognitive technique where in one color and using these boxes, I'm putting down things that I want to come back to. So for example, Kristen Antonio has an awesome YouTube channel where she posts these videos of microorganisms. So I wrote down, look at videos on her YouTube channel. She also shared this resource called Scale of the Universe website. So I wrote that down in this color because I want to come back to it. And then I also want to invite her some point to come on the Nature Journal show and do something like this on an episode of the Nature Journal show where she shares microscopic action and ecosystems and symbiotic relationships and other types of interactions, and then we could nature journal them live. So this is something that you could do in any type of note taking, is you can use a certain color. You could also use sticky notes or boxes, and make sure that when you come back, you review these things, because these are basically action steps. So I'm using this, I'm starting to use this green for sort of action steps, things that need follow-up. And then I'm using the purple just as visual hierarchy for like my categories and stuff like that. And yes, we did get to Nature Journal Tardigrades. This is the first time I guess it was a video, but it's the first time I've nature journaled moving tardigrades. I have done illustrations of tardigrades before for a BioBlitz that was happening in Oakland. And I wish I had that drawing somewhere on hand, but I made a drawing of a tardigrade for that. But it was so fun to draw these. It just makes me think that having a microscope would make it so easy to just nature journal from home anytime that I needed to. And here you can see it was just really fun trying to figure out what was going on with them, zooming in on different parts. And here I am using that Pilot Fudayaku pen. So one thing about this pen, oh no, sorry, this is the Fude Demanin, not the Pilot Fudayaku. So this is the fountain pen, and you can see that you can put down a lot of ink, and you can also get a lot of this line variation, but then you can create a visual hierarchy for your notes, because the nib has this angle that allows you to write in this really thin line, and that creates a visual hierarchy. So instead of going back and forth like I do on this pen between gray and black, what I can do is go back and forth between this thin line and this thicker line. So here I wanted to make this a priority. This is sort of a title. These drawings, I wanted to make those a priority, but this extra text, I make it in a thinner line. Now, if I wrote everything, if everything was with the thick line, then everything would compete and it would all be the same priority. There wouldn't be a visual hierarchy. If you're making notes and you're organizing information, visual hierarchy is essential. Notice how here I made this an even bigger emphasis by making it in bubble letters with the fat side of the pen. So visual hierarchy is super important whenever you're sketchnoting, whenever you're organizing information for yourself or for communicating to other people. Visual hierarchy is essential, and it also adds to the aesthetic. I think the page looks more aesthetically beautiful when there is a visual hierarchy, and this can go into the background. If all of these words were the same emphasis as this line right here, if there was no line variation, it would just look like a very crowded page. So the aesthetics, the communication, and the learning for yourself all benefit from visual hierarchy. This keynote was amazing. So Dr. Nasheen Razani is a professor and a doctor, and she's doing amazing work to show that nature is essential for our healing. Nature is health. And she talks about some of the earliest studies that actually looked into this were only in like 1984, and people were recovering from surgery. And it just so happened that in this hospital, some people were looking at a brick wall. Oh, let me add that these are, you can see here that I was rushing to make these drawings, and sometimes I didn't finish them. So this is a brick wall. Some people had a view while they were recovering from surgery of a brick wall. Other people had a view out the window at nature. And what they found is that the recovery was better, and all of these other things ended up being better for the people who had a view of nature. Big surprise, right? So she's done all of this work on this, and it's super, super interesting. The main organization that she has started that she's working for is called SHINE, and it stands for Stay Healthy in Nature Every Day. And they've found evidence at all life stages, from the embryo to old age, that more exposure to nature improves your health. The unfortunate thing is that this is a social justice issue, and that there are major differences between who has more nature access, how long their life expectancy is, versus people who don't have nature access. And this is directly connected with social and economic disparities in the US. So I'm going to write life expectancy because I didn't get that before because I was going so fast. So you can see here, I kind of switched to just more verbal note-taking because there was so much information and she was going so fast, and sometimes it's just easier. And I'm mainly using this Fude Demonin pen, which I do recommend definitely to have it in the studio. I think it costs like $13. I'm not totally sure if I can recommend it for the field nature journaling yet. I have taken it in the field, but for me, I really like to have super dependable stuff in the field that doesn't have any special requirements or anything like that. And this is not quite at that stage, but for note-taking tonight, it worked really well. I was able to do, you can see how I created a visual hierarchy. And then I have my smaller writing by using that nib, because you can, depending on the angle you use the nib, you can get a fat line or a thin line. With COVID, she found that local nature is really what matters. So having nature that is close and easy for people to access is super important. And this is another thing. You'll notice I brought in my green, my teal color, because this is a highlight. This is something I need to think about a lot more. At a certain point, she said, I might stop saying nature and start saying biodiversity. This was kind of like a mind-blowing statement for me, or it sort of made a connection, because I've really been wondering about, like, what does nature mean? We use this word so frequently, and we take it for granted that we have sort of a clear idea of what it means, and we share that idea with other people. And it's also it is sort of political. And when it comes down to sort of these health issues and these social justice issues, what is nature and what do people really need to be healthy? And she is basically saying here that biodiversity is the thing that people actually need. And I think there have been some studies that indicate that putting people in a place where there's many species of plants and many species of animals makes them feel better. So being in a place where you could be potentially in a place in nature where there's just like one kind of thing growing, that might not have these same effects. But that would still be nature according to some of these other definitions of nature. So she's considering transitioning from saying the word nature and saying the word biodiversity. So this is something I want to think about a lot more. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. When you go nature journaling or you experience the therapeutic effects of nature, do you see a correlation with biodiversity, or do you also feel like the same relaxing effects, the same beneficial effects when you go into a thing that might be nature but is maybe not so biodiverse? So let's think about this for a while, because I think it's an interesting question. She also talked about how it's really important for when we're talking about these sort of the social justice issue of nature access, that we try to think about how to empower communities to bring greening into their communities and not just gentrify communities. And so she defined that in a way that I thought was really useful, because she said that it's greening is with community involvement. Gentrification basically means it's development of some sort that is happening without community involvement from the people that live there right now. And so I thought that that's something I need to learn more about. And I thought that was really interesting the way she explained it. And she said that, access to nature right now, at least in California, it's a housing issue. It is a housing issue. Where people live and what people can afford to live in is the main determining factor on whether they have access to nature or not. And that is hugely problematic, because those people end up having these health issues because they don't have access to nature. She also mentioned this subject that I'm going to have to look up more later, cultural humility. And the 3 tenets of cultural humility are, so this would be an example, like if I were to say, like, part of me had this urge, like she's talking about these people and this program in Oakland and in urban areas that's really helpful. And part of me has this urge, I want to go help. I want to go teach nature journaling there, and I can help. So that can be sort of patronizing, and it can be patronizing when you tell people you need more time in nature. You need to nature journal. Like, let me show you how to nature journal, and that will make you better. That can be sort of patronizing. And one of the things she's recommending is this perspective of cultural humility. And so the perspective here has 3 tenets. The first one is genuine curiosity and willingness to learn about others and their culture and their backgrounds. So that's number 1. And I think most of us have that already. Number 2 is really important. And I think sometimes people of privilege sometimes stray into dangerous areas with this one, because the tenet number 2 is recognition of power imbalance. So for example, for me to say, everyone should go nature journal. Everyone should go spend some time in nature, or let's all go out into our gardens right now and nature journal. If I say, let's all go out into our gardens right now and nature journaling, I'm not recognizing a power imbalance. I'm not recognizing that some people don't have access to nature. That's one piece. And she was also pointing out that, like, she as a doctor telling people they should go into nature is a power dynamic there. And then the next thing is willingness to try to improve that power imbalance or work on systemic change. So the third tenet in cultural humility is being willing to actually try to help do something to work against racism, to work against these systemic problems that are making people unhealthy and making it for some people hard to access nature. Not everyone can just go out and nature journal or go birding. It is a privilege that some of us have because of the way we look. It's easier for us to access these things, or because of where we live, or because of how much money we have, it's easier for us to access these things. This is a complicated topic, and this is still really new stuff for the nature journaling community, but this is something we really need to work on. So I was really glad that she brought in some of this information. And I think tomorrow in the Pencil Miles and Chill, we're going to be talking about nature journaling and race. And I think it's going to be very interesting. Nature journaling and social justice, nature journaling and inclusivity. It's going to be very interesting. This was something I wanted to highlight. When you empower communities, they will green their own community. So this idea that, you know, people from the outside need to come into these urban areas and teach people how to connect with nature is patronizing. And so figuring out, you know, she is saying that if you just empower people, they know that nature is valuable. It's not like immigrants and Black people and Hispanic people don't value nature. That is problematic thinking, and that she is saying that all cultures value wilderness, and that when you empower communities, they will green their own community. So take a moment to sort of reflect on your own thinking and how some of these things could be influencing your own thinking, and how we can try to instead practice this cultural humility and really move forward with that. She's also pointing out that, you know, labeling some urban people as just having nature deficit can be patronizing as well. And that what she is finding is really helpful is just creating a space that is consistent, that is building relationships of trust, where you have a consistent space and access for people to get out into nature, and that you're not asking them to do anything. You're not telling them, okay, you have to plant these trees. Okay, you have to go on a hike. Okay, you have to nature journal. It's like you just give them the opportunity to be out in nature, and that's the most important thing right there. She also had a really interesting thing about developmental stages. She said that ages 3 to 6, it might just be best to just let them splash in the mud. This age, forcing people to nature journal at ages 3 to 6 might be too early. What they really need is just to be sensory. Just let them splash in the mud if that's what they want to do. Then she said ages 6 to 12, that could very well be the golden nature journaling time. This age group right here, if you work with kids, maybe you've noticed that at this age, kids are so ready and they are often really attentive to what you say. And if you start nature journaling, kids this age are just going to gravitate towards you and want to know what you're doing. They're good at asking questions. They're basically natural nature journalers. And then she said ages 12 to 18, if they show up at all, you're lucky. If kids in this age range show up, then you know that you're doing something right. People asked questions after the keynote about how reproducible her whole system is. And she said, you know, it's really about relationships and consistency and willingness to show up for the community. So she's been showing up consistently for these people. She's built relationships with these people, and they go out to nature on a regular basis. So this isn't something that you can just cookie cutter reproduce. It's something that there needs to be individual people who are committed to these relationships with the community and consistency and willing to show up for them. But she does hope that eventually with this kind of research, it will be possible to get like funding from Medicare for this, and to actually make nature prescriptions and park prescriptions something that is prescribed and is recognized as an actual medical benefit. Anyways, it was such a great keynote and such a great day. It's been a long day for sure. I'm trying to connect ideas from some of the different people who will be speaking. Richard Louv, I've been reading his book. And here's a little bit of the nature journaling I did, or sketchnoting I did in the post keynote session, but it's been quite a marathon. I've basically been taking notes since 8 o'clock this morning when things started. I've had a few breaks But let me just go through my nutritional recommendations. Just so you know, some of this is a joke. Nutrient-dense foods are really good. So butter, for example, is nutrient-dense. Canned fish is great, really easy. I've got this almond butter here that I can eat. I also do recommend having some either coffee or whatever caffeinated beverages you like that you can go to easily. Protein, because remember, like Jack says, your brain burns a huge amount of calories. So if you're taking classes and you're taking notes and you're nature journaling, you're burning a lot of calories. So I don't know if you noticed being hungry a lot today, but I highly recommend having some good snacks. Like protein bars could be good, but also like carrots and hummus or things you can easily snack on that are healthy. Or else if all you have is a chocolate bar, you're just going to eat your whole chocolate bar really fast. That's some of my tips for the conference. And for all of you who can't go to the conference, just keep tuning in every single night. At the end of the conference, I'm going to be doing this recap. I'm going to show you my notes from the day. I'm going to talk about the keynotes, talk about the classes, and all of that. So tomorrow is the second day of the Wild Wonder Conference, not including the teacher day. Thank you so much for joining in. And check it out tomorrow at the same time. All right, bye.